So with the next example that we want to do or talk about is um, we want to assume doing something similar to what we just did with the SACN and OSC, but the data is slightly more complex now because the data is not just a single string or a variable like a float or an int. The data is, let's say, some tracking data. For example, we want to use an object, make use of other objects to visualize the data coming in and also manipulate that data from an object perspective. So to do that, let's take a look at it as an example. In this situation, I've got something on the same machine sending data over SPNet over to me. So I can create the SPNet IO connection, again, selecting the input network card where we're receiving that input data. Then what you can do is you can actually take a look at the data packets, whether we're even actually receiving anything for SPNet, for example. So at the very top there on the header of those of the inspector, the second to the left is one called inspector in. Let me bring that window over. And so here we are. This is the inspector in, and this is a representation of a frame. As you can see up here on the top right corner, we're running at 30 FPS. So that means one frame is 33.333 milliseconds, as indicated here by the numbers on the bottom there. And then you can see by the white bar, these are the packets that are being received. The one in the middle there is basically the average, and all the small ones at the top are then a representation of the history of some of those packets and where they have landed within the frame. If in a situation where you don't have input, then what does it look like? If you lost data, this is what it will look like. You will just have this blue gradient and then just showing that, hey, and you don't see any of the white bars, and that means you're not receiving any data anymore through this protocol. If this is the first time you've created this IO connection and it's never actually received any information from the beginning, then this will just be a gray box window with no markings here indicating sort of a frame or whatever, and there won't be any white bars at the top showing the arrival of those package. So let's just enable that back. And here now we're seeing the data coming in again. And in the situation, let's say, especially with tracking data where timing and framing is a little bit more critical, we also have a way to sort of visualize what is going on that side of things. So let's say if we now change the whole project instead of running in 30 FPS, we're changing it to be 50 FPS. Obviously, this is not a good situation and setup. And we are showing it with the inspector in to show you, hey, you're dropping a lot of packages. Your data is just all over the place within the frame. And oftentimes when you see something like this is a very good indication that your timing is just different. So the project's frequency versus the frequency of the incoming data, there's a mismatch. So someone needs to go and actually adjust that accordingly. Hopefully that's available. So either you go and adjust on the sender side, or you have to change the frame rate of this project to run. But this is on a global instance. So if you have multiple tracking systems, it's probably a wiser choice to go into the tracking system and ask that to be in the right frame rates rather than adjusting the frame rate here on the grid. So let me just change that back and settle things down a little bit. So here we are. That's it. So we are now receiving data through SPNet. The next thing that we want to do is make use of an object to encapsulate that information and then also visualize that in the 3D space. And what we're going to do is use the tracker And I'm going to use this opportunity to show you that you can drag from this menu where you're adding your objects and place it under a folder directly. So if I just let go, now you can see the tracker is now underneath that folder. And I can even put a SPNet IO connection under the tracker as well. So you can stack multiple layers. And that just helps you organize things a little bit. And just like the previous situation with the SACN, in this time, we are now going to go through the maps input and output system to utilize this object to visualize where that data is and where it is in space. So under the maps input, you can see now we have the option for SPNet. As you are creating more of these IO connections and those are compatible protocols associated with that object, that list will be bigger. So these are not all of the ones that are available through Grid Studio. Some of them just have not been created. So we're not just showing you that huge list when you don't have one created or connected properly already on the project. So now you can see we are receiving the data, and this tracker is now moving around nicely in a circular pattern. And as you can see, the data looks a little rough, so let's do something about that a little later. But similar to like before with the SACN and OSC, we are now going to convert that to another protocol. But let's say we want to use 3D as an example. So now we've created the 3D IO connection, and under the tracker, under maps output, now I have the option for 3D. And that's it. That's how you are able to then convert SPNet into 3D protocol. Or you can mix and match from whatever protocol to whichever one you want, as long as they're compatible within the object itself. And just like before, now after monitoring it, we see some in this situation. With that, we can then apply some logic just to clean that data out a little bit. So for example, under filter, that's where we are going to be able to apply some logic there. So let's see what we want. We have a average or smoothing. Let's use smoothing. So smoothing just smooths out the data, and as you can see, that helps a little bit. And there's a bit of jitteriness. So maybe that's not what you want. So you can always just do that and clean that out, or temporarily disabling it, for example. Or I can then use something like a speed limit. And I know at maximum it is traveling 2 meters on the x-axis and 2 meters on the y-axis, or on the z-axis, but nothing on the y-axis. So I'm just limiting it going up and down vertically. So that seems to clean out actually pretty well. Of course, you can spend a bit more time just to make that a little bit more perfect. But that's how you are able to stack multiple ones, and then also turn on and turn off different ways to then see what works best for you. Okay, so now that we've gone through this situation where we're taking more complex data that has, let's say, rotational and positional values, we utilize a tracker object and then using the maps in and maps out to get the data coming in, visualize that in our viewports before sending that back out. And of course, doing some filters before doing the outputs as 3D maps. Now, while we are here, you can see that as we are creating more objects into the project tree, this project over here, this number goes up. This is an indicator as to how many credits you need for your project. And here you can see we are using up 210 credits. Different objects will require different credits. Some are just free. For example, you can see a tracker does not require any credits, so that's why it is not on this list. There are other things. For example, there are tools that you need to enable or disable in order to use them. So these add-ons are underneath here at the bottom of this credit window. And if you don't have enough, you don't have any or enough credits to run your projects based on this number, then Grid Studio will have a digital watermark. So that means any IOs, inputs and outputs, every couple of minutes, we will block that for a few seconds. But as long as you have enough credits, then off you go. Everything is all open and you can then do what you need based on the amount of credit available. So this Grid Studio is absolutely free. You can just go online and download that and start playing around. And so even if you have 0, you can start building and then use Grid Studio as a way or as a calculator as to how much credits you will need before going on to our web shop and actually paying for those credits and then applying those credits through a wallet into this project, for example. But if you don't have one, you can still use Grid Studio. So it's been great that maybe you're at the office, you're at home, you're just pre-programming something or just editing or just trying to learn Grid Studio. You can just download, go ahead. And then only when you are deploying onto an actual project is when you actually need to apply the credits onto that machine. But these credits don't get used up. So it's not like if I have here, like, 9,999 credits, and then after using this 210, this project, this number will go down. And then if I open another project, this number keeps eating away. That is not what will happen. These credits will just be opened up, added back again. So that means the credits will stay as they are, as long as you just have enough to open up the project, and that's all we're checking. We're not eating up those credits as you are using Grid Studio. So that's the credit system. And now let's dive deeper into the next topic, which is the event and action system, which is the last topic of this webinar. So what you can do with Grid Studio is also monitor and react to different things that are happening in your overall system. And how to be able to react to it is, first of all, you need to be aware of an event happening. So that's the event. And then when that event has happened, you can then assign actions into that event. So that's how you can make the association of when something has happened, I want to do the following. And events can come from a wide variety of different things. They can be things from a specific object. They can also be things coming from internally. For example, a area object will create events when a tracker, specified trackers have entered in or left that zone. So that can be an event. IO connections, maybe you're receiving messages, for example, like OSC IO connections, that can be an event when we are receiving a message from OSC. Another place that you can create or use events are widgets. So when you create those widgets and buttons and all of those things and sliders and knobs and whatever, those are widgets, and they can be events when someone is playing around and interacting with them and using them. So that's another way that we can make use of widgets or make use of the event and action system. So let's create a widget.